the feeling there, your first NFL?
It was awesome. It was awesome. Definitely a dream come true. First NFL touchdown, and to have my teammates celebrate me was an awesome moment. So hopefully it was first of many for sure.
That's Justin Fields, the newly anointed Messiah of Chicago, talking about his very first NFL game with the Chicago Bears. And yes, it was just the first week of preseason football, but for rookie quarterbacks like Fields, a game like that isn't just a rehearsal. It's a referendum, maybe even a religious revival. So today, our Louis Riddick, former NFL safety and front office executive, shares his deep love for this time of year and his insights into a franchise and a coaching staff that he knows so well. I'm Pablo Torre. It's Tuesday, August 17th. This is ESPN Daily, brought to you by Goodyear. Discover the road ahead. Goodyear. More driven. So, Louis Riddick, you played in the league for a bunch of teams. You were a scout. You were the director of player personnel for a couple of teams. How's your relationship with the preseason changed over the years now that you're both Monday Night Football analyst guy and also like perpetual general manager candidate that like Chicago fans are very mad is not their GM right now?
I love it. I love that part of it. And see, I love it past the first quarter. I love it past the second quarter when most people are like, I don't know these guys. Talk to me in September. I'm still into it because that's the old scout in me. That's the old, I want to find the guy that nobody knows, put his name out there. Hopefully he makes the team. Hopefully he has some kind of primary role in the regular season. And I like being ahead of the curve. That's the challenge for me.
Yes.
Pablo, I love that part of it. I'll never not love that part of it. It's hard to project success in the NFL. I mean, it's hard as hell for scouts and GMs.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for me. It's even harder for me when I'm not there seeing these guys practice every day. For scouts, this is kind of like your validation time. This is where all the work that you did all last year kind of comes to the forefront, and you're having those daily personnel meetings where you sit in the back of the room and listen to the coaches go through the roster every night like I used to in Philly when Andy was there. And you're either having those coaches justify what you thought was going to be a good player for your football team, or just crush them and you sit there and want to sink into your seat and walk out of the room because you messed up the evaluation somehow. That's the cool part for me.
Yeah, I mean, you're making a case, Louis, that is predicated on both general, genuine interest in the game, but also on your skills as like a stock picker. And so I come to you because, as you alluded to, the NFL is famously, comprehensively terrible at finding really good quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And yet, here you have a stock that you've put your stamp on, Louis. Let's be honest about this. Justin Fields entering the second quarter of that first preseason game for the Chicago Bears over the weekend. What were you feeling? What were you thinking as he goes 14 of 20 for 142 yards, 1 touchdown, 33 yards rushing, and another score on the ground? How were you processing all of that?
Okay, so the greats, the people who have the potential to be great when you're talking about athletics, I don't care if it's football, basketball, track and field, whatever it is, their movement patterns, their body language, their execution, when it's on, it looks so damn effortless. It almost looks like they aren't really trying. It's almost like they're just out there playing the same way we used to play when we were kids. And you just sit there and you just kind of marvel at just how easy it looks. And that is how he looked.
Fields hangs in there, starts to close, he leaves the pocket to the 10, to the 5, bowls into the end zone for a touchdown! Touchdown Bears! Fields, everything picked up, wide open, Jesse James at the 5, just backs into the end zone, touchdown! Touchdown Bears! And they take the lead for the first time today, 16-13 over the Dolphins.
He didn't look like someone who was pressing. He didn't look like someone who was nervous, who was jittery, who was second-guessing himself, who was almost, who was overplaying the game. He was just playing the game as it came to him. And he spoke about that a little bit afterwards, about how he was surprised that it wasn't as fast as, maybe he expected.
It was actually kind of slow to me, to be honest. I think, I was expecting it to be a little bit faster, but, practicing, game speed, going at it with my teammates every day. And, of course, we have a great defense. So me going against them every day, it definitely slowed the game up a little bit for me.
And I think that was taken a little bit out of context, because I think what he was saying is, look, I have a pretty damn good defense that I practice against all the time.
Because the way it read, Lewis, the headline is, Justin Fields thinks he's figured out the entirety of NFL football.
Of course, and you know how we are in the media now, man. We'll take that kind of stuff and just blow it up. Although I will say this, too. I wasn't too taken aback by what he said, because I'll say this. I remember my very first postseason start in the playoffs when I was with the Cleveland Browns. And that game, everybody kept asking me, are you sure you're ready? Are you sure? It's going to be hype out here, man. Things moving real fast. You sure? You sure? And I'm like, will y'all calm down? I'm good. And you know what? When the game started, Pablo, I'm telling you now, I'm getting old. 27 years later, I can remember it like it's yesterday. And it was slow because I was ready, because I was prepared and I was calm and I was confident. And that's just how Justin comes off. That's how he comes off. I mean, you saw yesterday, in that game, Next Gen tracked him as, his speed being faster than any skilled player had reached for the Chicago Bears years or whatever it was. I can't remember exactly what they said. But
basically, the stat was this is the fastest Chicago Bear you probably have seen.
Right, outside of Gale Sayers, who was playing back when I wasn't even born.
Right.
I know the play they were talking about, and I'm going, but he's so damn smooth. See, that's what you're missing with this guy. This guy's making it look easy. All these young quarterbacks made it look easy.
Oh, there was a point, Lewis. There was a point where Justin Fields was literally walking around during a play, and I just cannot imagine the confidence that you have to have in order to pull that off, having never been in this setting before.
There's no question about it. Of course, part of it is confidence. There's no doubt. There's no doubt. And, some people, like to term that as having it. And that has been something that the people in Chicago have told me numerous times over the past couple of weeks, couple of months. He just has it. And you know what it's doing for them too? That it factor is making them more confident, is making them come to work with a different mindset than they did before he got there. And this is a guy who wasn't taking a regular season snap. Why? Because of the fact that everything he does, he makes it look like he's done it before. Like it's just easy to him. It comes easy to him. And it's not that he's not giving max effort. That's just what the greats do.
It looks like control, Lewis. It felt like a young person, a very young person, a 22-year-old, number 11 overall pick, in control. And I'm curious, Lewis, was there one play in particular that was his best play to you that you still have sort of running in a reel in your brain?
No, there's a couple of them. Right before the half where they were able to kick a field goal and they started deep in their own territory. And they had less than 30 seconds on the clock. And he had a couple good completions.
Plants and fires, and he's got Lacey. Fields checked down again. Herbert has the first down and smartly runs out of bounds. That's the first down of the day for the Bears. Another check down to Herbert. This time he's able to force himself out of bounds despite the hits.
He had a situation where he had to break the pocket out to his right, threw across his body, waited for the receiver to uncover.
Across his body, and he connects. He's got Justin Hardy. 7 seconds left.
Yeah, not panicky at all. I mean, just steps up, flows to his right, throws across his body. Nice throw right there. He waits for it to uncover. Just, it's just natural for him. He's natural at that.
Looks like he had already been there before. Like, okay, I remember we practiced this, we repped this, because there was no panic.
And a nice job by Fields in the final minute to help set them up and get them into field goal range for 3 points from a very...
Here's a young man who, during the pre-draft run-up, was kind of drugged through the mud.
I think Justin Fields has some issues. There's things that concern me.
Fields' issues can really scare me as a thrower at times.
Number one issue is
there's just too many easy throws where it's not even close to being a completion.
Took some body shots from anonymous sources about his level of football intellect, his level of commitment to the game, his desire to be great, especially in a class that now is just going to be, I believe, 5-10 years from now, considered one of the great classes of all time, that quarterback.
Wow.
When you get all these other guys who, quite honestly, probably look really good this weekend. Mm-hmm. They really did. These young quarterbacks all gave you the impression that these guys have a chance. And Justin, without a doubt, was one of them. And he's always had that look to him, that look of, I'm seeing right through you. I'm looking right through you no matter what you're saying to me, no matter how many roadblocks you're trying to put in front of me. I'm looking right through them, and I'm trying to get to my goal. And that's how he played this game. And I think everyone was hoping that he would do that because of all the BS that he was put through and or things that were being said about him. This is a unique talent. This is a unique talent, just like Trey Lance is a unique talent, just like Mac Jones is a unique talent, Zach Wilson's a unique talent, Trevor Lawrence is a unique talent. This is one of the most talented quarterback classes we've seen in a long, long time. And the burden is not just on them. It's on the people now who are being entrusted to develop and utilize these young men. And I'm telling you, it's a great time, and I tweeted this the other day, it's a great time to be a fan of the NFL because there is a new wave that has now arrived, and we all get to watch it.
Well, Louis, you noted the people being entrusted to develop all these young quarterbacks. And so after the break, I want to look at the Bears specifically and assess why, for them, that task is especially fraught. With no fees or minimums on checking and savings accounts, banking with Capital One is like the easiest decision in the history of decisions. Kind of like choosing to listen to another episode of your favorite podcast. And with our top-rated app, you can deposit checks and transfer money anytime, anywhere, making Capital One an even easier decision. That is banking reimagined. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. Capital One, NA member FDIC. So, Louis, the question with the Chicago Bears as an institution, really, is simple. It's, can they be trusted with a guy as talented as Justin Fields? Because they have a bad track record here. Let's just be honest about that. Like, is there another franchise in the Super Bowl era that has been worse at scouting and developing quarterbacks? Because I personally can't think of one.
Yeah, especially not a blue blood like the Chicago Bears. I mean, that's right. What they are. You know, this team has won championships. This team has many, many, many Hall of Famers, many, many iconic players that are on the top 100 list of all time.
Yes.
And they've never had a quarterback that you would be able to put in the Marino, Elway, Manning type of category. Drew Brees, you just not even come close. I mean, the best quarterback they've ever had in my lifetime.
Yeah, Sid Luckman, Jim McMahon.
I mean, and I love Jim McMahon. I mean, I love him. And I love that 85 team. It was one of my favorite teams when I was in high school.
Oh, dancing Jim McMahon in a music video, great affection, but leagues below the caliber of
right.
starter that you'd expect from a truly top-class franchise like that. Yeah.
Right. And see, I know that the people there in Chicago and the head coach in particular, Matt Nagy, knows how important it is, not just for him in his job status, but for this franchise, I think for the city of Chicago, he knows how important it is to not mess this kid up, so to speak, to get it right for him, because he truly believes that the young man has everything that he needs from a football character, personal character, athletic ability, mental makeup standpoint to be one of the best to ever do it. I have long said this, and I'll always believe this because I've seen it not just at quarterback, but across all positions. More times than not is going to situations that are just not conducive to success, and that screwing players up and not allowing players to maximize their potential. That happens more than you would ever think, because there are not all 32 teams are created equal. There is a wide range of skill levels amongst coaches, just as there are amongst players. You think every coach in the NFL is a Pro Bowl coach? No, there's a lot of backups and emergency list guys who are coaching on rosters in the NFL because they have great contacts, great networks, good friends.
Yes.
And they keep their jobs. Just like, I mean, that's life, right? That's the world in general.
Every workplace, Lewis, has some of that. And quarterbacks, what you're saying, are by no means immune to those variables.
Absolutely not. Exactly. There's no question about that. Look, Patrick Mahomes going to Kansas City. Now, look, Patrick's a unique talent, okay? He's unique. But you think he didn't go to just the absolute perfect place being coached by Doug Peterson, Matt Nagy, Andy Reid, Eric Bieniemy, all the Mike Kafka now with those weapons? It's not going to be like that everywhere. So for Justin Fields, there are people who are down on Matt Nagy because of how the Mitchell Trubisky situation played itself out.
Yeah, Trubisky, who got drafted second overall, Lewis, in 2017, ahead of Patrick Mahomes, and now is no longer in Chicago after spending 4 seasons there. Although, to be fair, Matt Nagy was not yet in Chicago when Trubisky first got drafted.
And I'm sure if you and I have had a few beers with Matt Nagy and you sat down and just talked to him about it, maybe there were things that he would like to do over with Mitch Trubisky. And I'm sure there are things that Mitch Trubisky, no matter what the situation, understands that he just can't do. The point being this, I think the world is in Justin Fields' hands as far as what he could accomplish in Chicago, as long as Chicago does right by him, the organization does right by him, and Justin stays on the straight and narrow, on the right path as far as just wanting to be as great as he possibly can, which he has given zero indication that is not the case.
Yeah, I want to clarify also. I mean, you and Matt Nagy go back, right? You guys worked together in Philadelphia. That is somebody whose brain you have picked in the past, and I imagine he does the same with you. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely.
So the question, Lewis, practically speaking, is how much are we going to see from Justin Fields this season? Because you said it, right? The plan had been Andy Dalton, the veteran, is the starter. Fields is the number 2. Nick Foles is behind him at number 3. But again, you know Matt Nagy as well, I mean, better probably than anybody doing this stuff in our business. What's your sense? What's your read? I mean, your personal projection for how much Justin Fields we're going to get this season?
He really is going to allow Justin to determine when is the right time for him to be put in there. As long as Justin can protect himself as far as making sure that he has enough of a grasp of the offense to where he doesn't, like, for instance, he's able to adjust protections, make sure that he has himself protected so he's not taking blindside shots upside the head and he's taking unnecessary hits, and then all of a sudden that starts messing with his confidence. So as long as he's able to demonstrate that, I think Matt will put him in there much sooner rather than later, simply because he's better than Andy.
Yeah,
he just is. And even if he's a little bit less prepared from an experience standpoint, he can make up for it because of that next gen speed that they clocked in the preseason game. He can make up for some of the things that aren't just perfect. Matt wants to, he's been through this before, although the situation was different in Kansas City with Patrick and Alex Smith. And I'm telling you this, when he watches Justin, do you think for a minute he's not sitting there going, damn, I just want to put him in there and let him go? Of course he is. He wants to see him as much as all of us do.
He wants to drive the Aston Martin, Lewis. He wants to drive the... I mean...
Exactly. But he knows that he's got a bigger responsibility than that. But I'll just say this, too. There was a point in time, early in Patrick's rookie year, where they thought about putting him in there. Should we just go ahead and put him in there?
Just bench Alex Smith because Patrick Mahomes is just this sort of dual threat good.
Exactly. Because he was doing stuff from out the gate that they were like looking at each other like, oh my God. I know that for a fact. I know. And they had to sit on their hands because they were still winning. Alex was having a career year, but they also knew, man, this 15 boy, whew, my God. And they had to forcibly keep themselves from putting him in the game.
To put a finer point on it, Lewis, because I'm just sort of piecing this together now as I hear you explain it like this. I mean, Matt Nagy has seen Patrick Mahomes as a backup up close. He has had Mitch Trubisky as his starter up close. These are both guys on two ends of the spectrum. And here arrives Justin Fields, his first-year rookie quarterback, and it must feel like this is an opportunity that he has been dying to have in specific for his whole life.
Of course. And he wants to get it right. And I can't stress this enough. Not just for, well, hell yeah, he wants to get it right. He don't want to be out on the street. He don't want to be like making the training camp tour like another good friend of mine, Doug Peterson, is doing right now, going around and seeing camps and stuff because he's unemployed. Mm-hmm. He wants to get this right. Think of what it would mean for Matt to be one of the chief reasons why they drafted this young quarterback, for him to hit it big and be one of the best quarterbacks that the city of Chicago has ever seen, for them to not only get to the playoffs, but win a playoff game, become an NFC title contender, and for them to get over the hump at some. Just think, I mean, of course he wants all that. Of course he does. But knowing him like I know him, I will say this. He personally wants to see Justin be able to also look back at all of the people who were saying whatever they were saying about him and have him then have the ammo to go, be careful next time. Be careful. Be careful when you talk about finely tuned athletes like myself. Be careful. Because guys like that thrive off of that BS, man.
So just to talk about the expectation level here, Lewis, because it feels like everybody after this one game is now buying stock in Justin Fields as soon as they can because they know the price is about to skyrocket. But I also don't want us to get too ahead of ourselves. So just to insert some perspective here, when you look at where this Bears team is right now, what's their timeline to title contention? How long do Bears fans have to wait, do you think, before they can see real success again?
For Justin to really reach his potential, which obviously in turn takes his team and gives it a better chance to reach its potential, the offensive line in particular is a problem point for Chicago. And look, if they sign 38-year-old Jason Peters, Jason is on his last legs. He's a surefire Hall of Famer, one of the greatest athletes to ever play offensive line in the NFL. For them to be signing him at this point does not bode well for how they feel the prospects that they have lining up at offensive tackle are at this point. I've seen quarterbacks get the living beat out of them as youngsters. I've seen it up close and see what it does to their psyche. That's the kind of thing that Matt can't afford to have happen. Those are the kind of things that they have to iron out before we can even start talking about timelines concerning when they can become true contenders. Because right now they don't have a contending offensive line. And if you don't, you ain't going anywhere in the NFL at the highest level. That's just you just aren't going anywhere. Patrick showed you that last year. Kansas City showed you that last year.
Right, in the Super Bowl, we saw it.
For as good as he is, he can't overcome that.
So let's end on a note of optimism here, Lewis, because underneath all of this, and you've provided all of the legal footnotes here, the caution is now clear about the offensive line. Yeah. But it's still true that the hardest thing to find in the National Football League is a star quarterback. And it sounds like you're confident that this is a kid who has all of those ingredients. So when you talk to Matt Nagy, what do you tell him? Because I imagine that you have thoughts and opinions about this that you've expressed to him as well.
Yeah. Honestly, I would say this. It doesn't hurt him to take this slow. Okay? It really doesn't. I understand that the city wants him to play. I understand that there's a faction out there that believes that, you know what, it doesn't matter. Just throw him out there. You know, they can learn on the job. It's not going to hurt him at all. Well, that's true, but that's also not true. And I tell him that when I talk to him all the time. Look, you'll know when it's time. So just trust your instincts. Build out the rest of this football team. You do what you feel is right. But I'd also, and I've already ended conversations with him this way too, but get him out there. That kid's exciting. Get him out there. Put him out there. And he knows that. And he wants to see him too. So,
Yeah, Lewis, it sounds like you're both incredibly excited, but also you're like, listen, man, I'm in this. I bought this stock to hold it. I did not buy this stock to sell.
Yeah, no question. We live in a world where it's just about now. People don't really care about forever.
That's correct. You've described a paradox that is almost impossible to achieve in most cases.
I mean, that's why this sport is so popular and why we love it, Pablo, and why it's the engine that drives everything in the media in this country.
Yeah.
Because that paradox is something that it's almost impossible to find the perfect balance unless you're Bill Belichick, who seems to have kind of run laps around the field here over the past 22 years. But
the exception that proves the rule, though.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. It's a great time to be a fan of the NFL. There's no doubt about that. The league's in good hands right now.
Louis Riddick, thank you for performing, as always, at a very high level with us on ESPN Daily.
I appreciate you having me back. Thanks.
All right, coming up, how the Mona Lisa of baseball cards broke another ridiculous record. Goodyear believes in the power of moving forward. No matter if it's on the court, the track, or the field, movement makes us want to be more. It pushes us to go further, to show the world what we can do. Movement has the unique ability to change our perspective, to challenge us to work for a better tomorrow. Movement can even bring us together when we're still. Because if we're focused on the next move, we don't have to worry about what's behind us. Goodyear. More driven. Here's another story I want you to know. It is a teeny tiny rectangular slab of cardboard, less than 2 inches wide and 3 inches tall, first printed by the American Tobacco Company back in 1909. And at that point, these cardboard inserts were deliberately stiff, mostly utilitarian devices designed to help protect the cigarettes from being crunched inside a pack. But more than a century later, in a Chicago suburb, an off-duty police officer stood guard, gun at the ready, to protect the cardboard, which was on display at the National Sports Collectors Convention last month. And the extra security was worth it, it turned out, because this particular slab, known as the T206 Honus Wagner, just sold for $6.6 million early Monday morning at auction, making it the most valuable sports card in the history of the world, by far. The previous record was $5.2 million, set by a 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle in January, and then tied by an autographed 0304 Upper Deck LeBron in April, before being ultimately blown away by this T206 Wagner and its anonymous buyer, who has only been identified as, quote, an East Coast collector. And while you may be feeling the sticker shock of $6.6 million, which I get, the drivers of that price are really as old as time. I mean, we're talking about scarcity, because only 60 of these Wagner cards are known to exist, and also about condition. Because while the cigarettes the card originally came with may have been well defended, the vast majority of the pieces of cardboard themselves were not nearly so lucky. But the single most eye-opening statistic here might have more to do with the Sports Collectors Convention, where that off-duty cop was standing sentry over this artifact. Because ESPN's Dan Hayducky reports that of the nearly 100,000 people who attended the event, 46.4% of them were first-timers, which means that their collections are still growing, and that this card collecting craze is still booming, and that the most valuable sports card in the history of the world might need even more protection soon. I'm Pablo Torre, and this is ESPN Daily. Now, I'll be away for the next 2 days, but have no fear because our good friend Emily Kaplan is going to be filling in starting tomorrow.